When you're making a budget for your perfect desk setup, the last thing you want to spend a lot of money on is cable management. I challenge myself to find the best possible setup for $50. I'm always looking on Amazon for interesting cable management products, and $50 seemed like the perfect sweet spot where I could keep all my cables nice and tidy without spending a lot of money. To start, I wanted some kind of box to hold the majority of the cables and hopefully power bricks. I purchased a 2" by 2" server cable management rack by Zeo for $24. When I first got the box in my hands, I will admit I had some concerns. Snapping on the cover is not super easy, and the slots for the cables to go through seem very small. But it turned out that rack was the biggest surprise of the whole project. I also knew I would need a lot of clips, straps, and cable holders. So I bought this large set on Amazon for $16. Finally, I wanted some 3M adhesive to hold my power strip and other items in place. So this brought me to right around $50. For this project, I chose to use the desk out in our studio set. This meant it needed to look super clean for it to remain the background for our videos. We also need the setup to be fully functional because we use this workstation to record audio. I wanted to keep it simple with everything wired through a dock and only 1 or 2 cables plugged into a laptop. I started off by planning where I wanted all my devices to go, which allowed me to map out the cables. Knowing where those cables were going to be, I also decided where I would mount my power strip and cable box. For the $50 price point, it was difficult to make the setup super flexible for changing out products and moving things around, but since I expect everything to remain in the same place, this isn't a big problem. With my plan in place, it was time to start attaching things to the desk. The cable tray is about 6 feet wide when the 2 pieces are put together, so I needed to cut it down to the correct size. It cut fairly easy with a hacksaw and the edges weren't too rough. I made sure that cut end was hidden under the desk. I considered using some adhesive strip to attach to the box, but decided there would be too much weight inside the box, so I used the screws. Now the screws that were included had too small of a head, so I replaced them with some screws I had sitting around the studio. I had no issue drilling into my laminate top, but just be sure that the screws you use are the correct length. My next step was to attach the power strip to the underside of the desk. I always put the power strip close to the left or right edge of the desk so that power cable can fall behind the leg. A quick pro tip here is to use a power strip with a long enough cable to make it all the way from the bottom of your desk to your outlet. This is especially important if you use a standing desk. I used the 3M padded adhesive because my power strip had no holes in the bottom to allow me to screw it into the desk. And a little bonus here, I was able to use some adhesive clips to attach that power cable to one of the legs of the desk, which made it almost completely hidden. When it came time to fill up the box, I started with the cables that I'm least likely to need access to, so they don't get tangled up with the other cables. That meant starting with the LED lights, monitor, and laptop power cables. The goal is to get as many of the cords into the box as possible, and then to organize the remainder of the cables that are running to and from the box. Now this is where the set I purchased from Amazon came into play. For the excessively long cables, I like to use Velcro straps to bundle them together. The trick to using this rack was to hook a part of each cable into one of the teeth on the rack to hold it in place. Without doing this, there would be no way of keeping the cable up where they needed to be before it was time to put the cover on. For any portion of the cables that were hanging loose, the adhesive strips worked great to keep them tight up against the bottom of the desk. Now earlier, I said I had concerns with the functionality of this server rack, but as it turned out, it was much easier to use than I anticipated. The cables fit fine through the holes, and the cover wasn't too difficult to take on and off. Now I wouldn't recommend it if you plan on changing your setup frequently, but for a more permanent setup like this one, it was a good value. Moving over to the back side of the desk, I use clips to keep the speaker wires flat against the desk. These wires can be delicate, so I wanted to keep them tight enough to avoid any slack getting tugged on, but also leaving some room to adjust the positioning. To make sure I didn't see any monitor cables going vertically, I used clips on the back of the desk and the monitor stand to keep these nice and tight. The Amazon set had some short cable sleeves, which was a great way to bundle and hide those cables coming down from the monitor. One little trick I've done at home is to attach my external hard drive to the back of a monitor that has USB connections. This keeps just one more item hidden away from view. The silicone cable holders included in this set are ideal for cables that you want to keep within easy reach, like the cable connected to my dock. If you have a phone or tablet charger, this is a great way to hold those cables in an easy to access place. The biggest thing I was lacking here with the items I purchased was anything for the vertical cables. Now if this setup would have had an Ethernet or printer cable going down from the desk, it would have been nice to add a cable snake to wrap those together, but that would have taken me over $50. For that $50 price point, I really can't complain about the functionality of these products. The biggest issue is that server rack is just too small to fit the power strips and power bricks inside of it, and I really don't like the look of those power units hanging down from the desk. I've already decided that we'll have to go back to having a wire management box on this desk to keep our video set looking super clean. This is just one chapter in my search for the perfect cable management setup. For more ideas and tips, check out this next video.